Hello, everyone. In our series of podcasts, today we have with us Felixa K.H from Germany. And I would like Felix to introduce himself because that's what our first question is about. So we'll get to know him a bit better because who am I to introduce him? He will do that perfectly himself. So Felix, can you tell us a bit about your early life and background in Baden-Württemberg?
Yeah, thank you, Oscar. First of all, I would like to give you a big thank you for the friendly invitation and this opportunity today. To start with your question, to give you a small background, besides my names and the dates. I grew up, as you mentioned, in southwest Germany, in Baden-Württemberg, between the Rhone River and Lake Constance, which is the biggest lake in Germany, very close to the border of Switzerland. I would say I grew up in a middle-class family. Our family holidays range from hotels to resorts and also camping, which is a passion that definitely lasts until today. I believe it was kind of predicted from my family side to serve Germany, as both of my great-grandfathers served as soldiers. My grandfather on my father's side served as a soldier, and later he was the platoon leader of my father during his mandatory civil service in the Red Cross. From 5 years on, I played handball and became long-term captain of my team. I also played in the Swiss Youth National League, became a referee and youth coach. In my youth, I began being interested in politics. I will also get to the reason of it later. If there's a chance to make it more deep. In my youth, I began, as I said, being interested in politics, history, geography, and society, which were always my best classes apart from sports. After my A-levels, I worked in food industry to earn some money for a backpacking and road trip journey through Europe. I think it was during those months, including a 2-month Interrail trip all by myself through 10 European countries, where I really started to be interested in European correlations. After that, I worked in food industry for another 2 years. Afterwards, I proudly joined the German army and became a staff sergeant in mountain infantry in Bavaria, which was my last step before the time now.
Okay, so that's great, and it connects well with our next question, because the next question is about military. As you mentioned, you have a family history of soldiers. So what, besides that, motivated you to join the military, and how has your experience as a soldier influenced your career and personal development?
Oh yeah, thank you to make that more deep. So my initial motivation was to give, besides the family history, was to give something back. We live in a free democratic country and also continent, mostly, which is not something that should be taken for granted or for free. Of course, it was also to challenge myself on a variety of new levels, sportive, personally. Eventually, my time of service really had a great impact on my political and personal views. During my time of service, for example, I joined my first political party ever. For my career, it was a great opportunity to learn new skills like leading teams, being responsible for man and material, and mastering situations of immense stress. Well, so now after my time of active service, I have the opportunity being paid for a period of time to look for a new task that fits my new intentions, preferences, and skills. You also ask for the personal development. I think for my personal development, I learned many highly useful skills, made unforgettable memories, and had unique experiences that shaped me as a person and surely as a politician as well. Talking about skills I learned, I would like to point out 2 remarkable ones. First is accepting sacrifice for a higher purpose, and second is being part of comradeship. This special relation is hard to understand for those who didn't serve in uniform, but it's even more refreshing to find it from time to time in civil life. I think it was a Polish man at the ECR Youth Summit in Brussels who said to me, "The last good man in politics must have been in the military."
That's great answer. I like how you had a chance, opportunity to connect your military service with your political activities. I mean that you were able to do this and this at the same time. That's very cool. And talking about politics, as a young political leader, how do you see the role of youth in shaping the future of Germany, Germany's political landscape?
Yeah, maybe I start at the party which I'm part of now. So when I joined, maybe to give you a reason, because in the first two parties where I haven't been that active, and I was just really looking for a matching party, and I found that in Bündnis Deutschland. Just 1.5 months after it was being founded, I joined it, and I decided to become a candidate for the first country board in Baden-Württemberg. My program was, and of course still is, to give young people in our party and country a strong, liberal, conservative voice, and to encourage other young people to take action in order to take responsibility for their and our future. So I was elected as vice chairman for our country's board. From then on, I organized events and platforms for young liberal conservatives to come together and form good relations. Just a few months later, I started our youth movement, NÄCHSTE Generation, or in English, Next Generation, together with a handful of other young political leaders, mostly from our party. Now, 9 months later, we have over 70 members from all over Germany. We have 1,200 followers on Instagram without paying a single euro for advertising. And we are growing every week in both numbers. I would like to use the opportunity to say thank you to all the great people in our movement and express my gratefulness for your trust in me as one of your leading figures. I have the strong feeling that this movement will achieve great things in the near and far future. I also want to emphasize how important the alliances with like-minded young people in your country and, of course, also all across Europe are. Especially, I want to point out the good and luckily always more positive developing Polish-German friendship within many organizations such as Europe Matters or the young networks in and around the ECR group in the European Parliament. In general, there's a German saying that goes like, the youth is the future, and that's 100% correct. We need to come together as patriots with liberal conservative positions, form inner and outer alliances, and make our views and beliefs count in real political outcomes and results. Some also say the youth is lost, but I don't see and I don't believe that. As long as there are young men and women who want a homeland full of freedom, wealth, peace, security, and perspectives for their and their family's future, there will always be a future for Germany and as well Europe.
I couldn't agree more. I would also like to add that I would also like to point out the importance of Polish and German friendship, and we will look forward for future projects with you, of course, as Europe Matters. And given your military background, my next question is about a current state of defense and foreign policy in Germany, and what changes do you believe are necessary?
Oh, that's a highly interesting question, and I think if I make that too deep, we will sit here tomorrow. So I will try to keep it short and on the surface. First of all, you now see that the things that were said and promised in the great announced Zeitenwende, change of times, initiated by our current government of liberals, Greens, and Social Democrats, were not ever meant to make real changes or differences. Defense policy is still not being taken serious, in my opinion, because if it would be so, we wouldn't still be talking and discussing about mandatory military service, for example. It was a great failure back in the times to think that the world, and especially Europe, will forever be super peaceful and that the USA will protect us forever, no matter what and how much we contribute. So the things that need to be done. is we need to strengthen the European part of NATO. We need to strengthen our own defense industry, and we need to build armies and alliances that match the modern security challenges. Military strength is a crucial part of power. If we as European nations and Europe in a whole don't want to lose our weight in the world, risk our democracies and economic stability, we need to come back to a foreign policy that's led by interests. Because without power and prestige, our values will have no weight and impact in the world anymore. That correlation really needs to be understood. To come to the end, I would like to point out one special point, because you asked for the changes that need to be done. I would like to point out that the Ministry of Defense should be led by someone who served a long time in the military and has the instincts to understand what needs to be done. Mr. Pistorius, who's in charge right now and who's the Minister of Defense right now, is a step in the right direction, no matter his political party, group in the Bundestag, or government, with which all of the three, he does not seem to be very happy currently as well.
Thank you for this answer. As we can see so far, you are quite a busy man. You have many responsibilities. So my next question is, how do you balance your professional responsibilities with your extensive political commitments?
Overall, to be honest, it is hard to live out private life in the same way as people who aren't that voluntarily active, and everybody can choose this option. Everybody is the master of his own, and I don't blame people who aren't that active or anything else. But for me, it's just not that easy to live our private life in the same way. But as I learned, sometimes you have got to sacrifice something in order to help make something bigger work. As I mentioned before, I'm in the lucky situation to now have the time and ability to look for a task and profession that allows me to bring in all the skills I learned, for example, in the military, and also continue my political work.
Thank you for this answer. And now I also hope that you have time for hiking still. As is a passion.
It really depends on how much my knees, how much my knee allows me. But yeah.
That's great if there's still space for that, and if your knees will allow. And now we'll a few questions about your future plans. So the first one is, what are your long-term goals with German coalition and your political career overall?
That's a fairly tricky question, but I will try to give my best to give you an appropriate answer. I think there's no secret that if you are active, you want to lead and get to positions where you're able to lead and really make a difference. But I don't plan my career around it. If my party needs me, I will be there. Our members know me as highly encouraged, reliable, and hardworking. As we now have country board elections coming up soon, I would like to pass on my seat for the youth representation to someone younger but active and talented. So this would be my wish for that. Because I believe in the limitation of times and positions and roles. There's always a next generation coming up, and I totally support that. I would like to use the chance to thank all our members and voters in Baden-Württemberg for the trust in me and my political and structural course. I fulfilled my task to start the youth in Baden-Württemberg, and I think now there's new tasks just right in front of me.
That's great. I think the new person that will take the leadership of the youth will have a great start, because you certainly grew the organization you are leading, as we could hear before. And the next question is, how do you plan to engage and inspire the next generation of political leaders and activists?
Yeah, there I will simply connect and make it more deep to my last words, and make clear that our mission now with the youth movement, Nächste Generation, Next Generation, is to invite all the young people in our political spectrum to join this first movement of this special kind in Germany. For the inspiration, I think inspiration always comes from 2 points. First is to give perspectives for the future, and the second is to be a role model in the best way you can to inspire others taking action. Political goals, in my opinion, have to be pursued by talking a little bit less, thinking a little bit better, and doing more. We want to gather the energy of the liberal conservative youth in Germany and get to positions where changes begin. The conservative change needs to range from the streets to the parliaments and will be carried and supported by the next generation of Germany.
I do agree with your thoughts about inspiring the next generation. And since we have you here, I couldn't miss the chance to ask you about about the current political situation. So the first question will be about Ursula von der Leyen, and I think the answer might be interesting since I think you know her before she was famous across Europe, because she was if I remember correctly, she was a Minister of Defense in Germany. So what are your thoughts on her re-election as a President of European Commission, and how do you think her leadership will impact the European Union's future?
Yeah, as you mentioned, she was the first minister I served under as a soldier, and I just spoke about it at one of your last questions. So that's more or less a funny coincidence now, but let's get to the serious part concerning her position as the re-elected president of the European Commission. There is several things to address. First of all, there is to point out that her Green Deal was not thought through at all and made the EU, in my opinion, take the wrong junction on the crossway of decision making in nearly all political fields, from energy supply, especially in Germany, over infrastructure, transport to industry and economy in general. Under von der Leyen, the EU was enabled to take over own debts, which should only be allowed for national states. The EU is being more and more transformed into an own super state, controlling the nations and their citizens. This is an evolution that I and we don't want. One thing that remains of her old legislation is surely the Pfizer SMS case, which stands symbolically for the corruption and the lack of transparency of the European Union. In the end, to summarize it up, she is the smallest possible consent at that point of time. And I think the ECR group should try to gain more influence without losing its principles, values, and political course of a truly conservative EU reform.
And now that we talked about the EU quite a bit now, the recent assassination attempt on former President Trump, it was a shock for many. How do you believe such incidents impact global political stability and security? Now we have new insights that it might have impacted Biden to resign from the race. So yeah, I'm looking forward to your answer.
Yeah, that's a question, I think, where the final answer can only be proved by the future. But I will try to summarize my thoughts on the case. I personally was shocked when I saw the attempted assassination in the media. In a democracy, there is no space for violence as a tool to force political changes. I personally, our youth movement Nächste Generation, and of course also our party Bündnis Deutschland, strongly condemn such kind of extremist actions. But to take a glimpse into the future, Donald J. Trump will most likely become the next president of the United States of America. And with that, Europe, and for our case, Germany, will need to manage more on their own, especially when it comes to defense and foreign policies, both topics I talked about earlier in the interview. The United States under Trump will most likely shift their focus of interests away from Europe and Ukraine towards Asia, China, Taiwan, and protection of their own trade routes. We can see this as a chance and not a threat. Hard times, in my opinion, create strong men, and Europe needs strong men and women if we want to secure our people's and nations' future in freedom, wealth, and security.
I really like this answer because many people now focus about when it comes to US politics, US presidential race, they talk about the personal favorites and they judge this race by their own political views. But you, I think, rightly so, look at this as what it means for Europe. So I really like this answer. And now, coming back to a bit more personal questions, I would like to answer ask you who has been your greatest influence or mentor in your political journey?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, and it's gives me the chance to really make to keep my promise to make the family topic and the one who inspired me a little bit more deeper. I will try to separate it a little bit into two parts and begin with the person who started my attention for politics a long time before the army. My grandfather on my mother's side was a successful entrepreneur. He was member of city council for 20 years, and he also was the second mayor of the city which I grew up in. Whenever I visited him, there were political documentations, live debates from the Bundestag, the German parliament, or political talk shows running in his TV. He often analyzed this for me, explained a lot, and opened my view for politics. Even though at that time I had several other priorities in my head, but those hours with my grandfather for sure lit a spark, which years later and catalyzed by my time as a soldier have led to a burning fire in the most positive way. I'm very grateful for my grandfather and my family. Secondly, there are to mention, of course, the people from which I learned, or from whom I learned the basic skills and knowledge of how a party works, and a board, concerning party constitutions, requests, party meetings, and so on, all the things you need to learn at first. Thanks for that to Peter and Stefan. And thirdly, there is to mention my first mentor when I just joined our party. His name is Thomas, and he told me one sentence that stayed with me and is my guideline in situations where you need to, let's say, watch your step. I do it in German first. It's Politik ist ein garstig Lied, sing nicht alles mit, which means something like politics is a nasty song, don't sing every verse. Finally, there's one person who acts as an important mentor and role model for me. It's former MEP and Lieutenant Colonel of Reserve, Lars Patrick Berg. I was lucky enough to manage parts of his campaign in the south of Baden-Württemberg during the recent EU elections, and I'm very sad for him that the ambitious and hard work of our team in Baden-Württemberg, where we had results partly around 1%, was federally not enough to ensure his re-election. Still, I want to thank him and our team for this experience, from which I learned a lot for the future.
Thank you. That's some great inspiration you had there. I think we can say that your grandfather was like a sole inspiration for your political activity and your whole self, and you had these more practical mentors than in the party. So that's very, very nice that you had these two parts, and you mentioned your grandfather and you dug deep into your family's history because it's quite interesting. And now the final question: besides hiking, what do you enjoy doing in your free time to relax and unwind?
In my now pretty rare, but yeah, in my free time, I enjoy classical dancing, for example. For what I am currently also looking for a new female dancing partner. So if she hears that, she can simply text me on Instagram or for those who know me, I'm a great fan of German cuisine and the traditional German relaxedness of a good beer garden, And also a quiet day at the shooting range is also one of my favorite activities to unwind and reboot my thoughts from time to time. As I mentioned before, family is very important to me, so I try to see my family and my grandfather as often as possible, help him with the garden, or simply discuss about politics. At that point, the student has not yet become the master, but I will always try my best to make him proud now and in the future.
Thank you for that. So if there is any female dancer that is listening to us, just contact Felix. His Instagram will be in the description. You will probably be off for a great dinner as well, as we could hear, because Felix here can cook, as he mentioned. So yeah, thank you for this interview. It was great to have you here, and we'll be looking into the future with cooperation with your organization and with you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. And I think our cooperation is always going in good steps, and I'm looking forward to a productive future together.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for listening.